Orphan girl found a house in the mountains. And what was there changed her life? Emily Carter ran through the fields of Aspen, fleeing the county orphanage for the 5th time. Her 12 years of life had been marked by abandonment and rejection, but she refused to accept that cold, loveless place as her final destiny. As she climbed the mountain rocks, her small hands bled, but her determination was greater than the pain. She had promised herself she would never return to that place where the other children mocked her for being different and where the caretakers treated her like a burden. Reaching the top of a narrow trail, she spotted something that made her heart race. A small stone house was nestled into the rock, as if born from the mountain itself. The structure seemed old, with wooden windows worn by time and a door hanging crooked on its hinges. Emily approached slowly, her bare feet rustling the dry leaves covering the ground. The house was in absolute silence with no signs of life. One of the windows had a broken pane, leaving a perfect opening for a girl as thin as she was. Without hesitation, she climbed through the window and jumped inside. The smell of mold and old dust filled her nostrils, but it didn't bother her. She was used to neglected places. What surprised her were the furniture covered in white sheets, like silent ghosts guarding secrets of the past. Curious, she pulled off one of the sheets, revealing a brown leather armchair well preserved despite its age. On the walls, dozens of framed photographs showed a smiling family. A beautiful woman with dark hair appeared at different ages, from a child to an adult. Emily studied each photo carefully. There was something hypnotic about those happy faces, a happiness she had never experienced. In one of the photos, the woman held a baby in her arms, and on the back someone had written in careful handwriting a date from 30 years ago. Hunger gnawed at her empty stomach, reminding her she had run away without taking any food. She explored the house looking for something edible, but found only clean dishes and pots stored in the kitchen cabinets. At least there was running water from the tap. During the first night, Emily wrapped herself in a blanket she found in an old trunk and slept on the living room sofa. The sounds of the forest echoed through the house, but they didn't frighten her. She preferred the company of crickets and owls 1,000 times over the constant yelling and fighting at the orphanage. In the morning, she woke to the sound of footsteps outside. Her heart raced and she ran to hide behind the window curtain. A man of about 50 was approaching the house, carrying a bag of groceries and a bouquet of yellow flowers. The man was tall and thin, with graying hair and an unshaven beard. His clothes were simple but clean, and he walked with the posture of someone carrying an invisible weight on his shoulders. Emily watched, fascinated, as he opened the front door with a key he took from his pocket. He entered the house as if it were his routine, put the groceries in the kitchen and began arranging the flowers in a vase with water. What impressed Emily most was seeing him approach the photographs on the wall and begin speaking softly to them, as if talking to living people. "Hi, my love, I brought your favorite flowers today. The daisies were beautiful at the market," he murmured to one of the photos, gently stroking the frame. Emily stood frozen, watching this strange scene. The man continued talking to the photographs for several minutes, telling them about his day and asking questions that would obviously receive no answer. There was a deep sadness in his voice that touched something inside her chest. When the man finally left, Emily came out of her hiding place with her heart pounding. She thought she was in a truly abandoned house, but clearly someone took care of that place with great affection. The discovery left her confused, and at the same time curious about who that man could be and why he acted so strangely. She examined the photographs on the wall more closely and noticed that they all showed the same woman at different stages of life. There were pictures of her as a baby, a child, a teenager, and a young adult. In many of them she was next to the man who had just visited the house, clearly younger and with a much happier expression. One photo in particular caught Emily's attention. It showed the woman wearing a wedding dress, radiant with happiness next to the man in a wedding suit. On the back was written, "Daniel and Sarah, the happiest day of our lives, March 15th, 1995. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out." Now continuing, Emily began to understand that Daniel, the mysterious man, had lost his wife Sarah in some way. This explained why he kept the house exactly as it was and why he talked to the photographs. but something still didn't make complete sense to her. During the second day, she explored each room of the house in more detail. In the master bedroom, she found a closet full of women's clothes organized by color, as if Sarah were going to return at any moment to choose what to wear. On the dresser, beauty products were still arranged as if they had been used yesterday. But it was in the smaller room that Emily made a disturbing discovery. It was clearly a child's room, decorated with pink wallpaper and small furniture. A crib, a dresser, a nursing chair, and dozens of toys lovingly organized. On the wall, more photographs showed Sarah pregnant and then holding a baby. The baby in the photos was a girl with big eyes and a toothless smile. In the following images, the child appeared growing up. First steps, first birthday, playing in the house's garden. Emily calculated from the dates that the girl would be about 12 years old today, exactly her age. This made her think of her own story. She had been abandoned at the county orphanage when she was 6 years old, after her mother simply disappeared one night without explanation. She never knew who her father was or if she had other relatives. The possibility that there was a family somewhere looking for her was a dream she had buried long ago. On the third night, a violent storm hit the region. The wind shook the trees with frightening force, and the rain beat against the windows as if it wanted to enter the house. Emily curled up on the sofa, pulling the blanket over her head to muffle the sound of thunder. The noise of the storm reminded her of one of the few good memories she had of her mother. On a similar night, she had hidden in her mother's bed, and the two of them stayed awake telling stories until the rain passed. Her mother smelled of herbal soap and had a soft voice when she sang lullabies. In the morning, when the storm passed, Emily discovered that Daniel had left a plate of hot food on the kitchen table: homemade bread, fresh cheese, berry jam, and a glass of warm milk. Next to the plate, a note written in a masculine hand: "For whoever is hungry." Emily's heart beat faster. This meant that Daniel knew of her presence in the house, but instead of expelling her or calling the authorities, he was offering help. She devoured the food quickly, as she hadn't eaten such a delicious meal for as long as she could remember. When Daniel returned that afternoon, Emily made a courageous decision. Instead of hiding, she remained seated in the living room armchair, waiting for him. When he opened the door and saw her, he showed no surprise or anger, only a sad smile that transformed his face. "Hi," he said simply, closing the door behind him. "My name is Daniel Mitchell. And you?" "Emily," she replied, ready to run if he made any threatening move. "It's a beautiful name. Sarah wanted to give that name to our daughter, but I preferred Emma," he commented, sitting in the armchair beside her. "I saw your footprints the first day you arrived here, Emily." "Why didn't you report me?" she asked, still suspicious. "Because I know what it's like to feel you have no place in the world," answered Daniel, looking at the photographs on the wall. "And because you remind me so much of her when she was your age." Emily followed his gaze to a photo of a smiling girl playing in the garden. The resemblance was striking. The same dark curly hair, the same large expressive eyes, even the same determined expression on her face. "What happened to them?" asked Emily, though part of her feared the answer. Daniel was silent for a long moment, as if deciding how much of the truth he could share with a child. His hands trembled slightly as he looked at the floor. Sarah became very ill after Emma was born. The doctors called it postpartum depression, but it was more than that. She started having confused thoughts, paranoia, a constant fear that something bad would happen to our daughter, he began, his voice growing weaker with each word. One night, when Emma was 2, Sarah woke up convinced that bad men were coming to take our girl. She took Emma and left the house barefoot in the middle of the night in heavy rain. I was working the night shift at the factory and only found out when I returned home in the morning. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. The story was taking a turn she hadn't expected. They found her car at the bottom of a cliff here in the mountains, 3 days later. They both were... Daniel stopped abruptly, unable to finish the sentence. "I'm so sorry," whispered Emily, not knowing what else to say. "It's been 15 years today," Daniel continued, wiping a tear that rolled down his face. "I've come here every day since. At first it was to search for them, then it became a habit. This was Sarah's favorite place when we were dating. We met right here on this trail. The revelation explained all of Daniel's strange behavior. He wasn't crazy, just a man destroyed by loss, trying to keep the memory of his loved ones alive. Emily felt a deep compassion for him, mixed with her own pain of abandonment. "You can stay here as long as you want," offered Daniel. "I won't tell anyone where you are, but you must promise me you'll eat properly and take care of yourself." In the days that followed, a strange but comforting routine developed between them. Daniel arrived every morning with fresh groceries and spent a few hours tidying the house and talking to the photographs. Emily watched his rituals respectfully, beginning to understand that this was his way of dealing with the pain. She also began to help him with small tasks. She swept the leaves that came in through the broken window, arranged the furniture, and even made tea when he arrived wet from the rain. Daniel was visibly moved by these caring gestures, as if he wasn't used to kindness. One afternoon, while they were tidying the wild garden around the house together, Emily gathered the courage to ask the question that had been tormenting her for days. "Daniel, have you ever thought about moving on? I mean, building a new life?" He stopped pulling the weeds and looked at her with a confused expression. "What do you mean, moving on? They are my family." "I won't abandon them," he replied with a defensive tone she hadn't heard before. "But they're not here anymore. You're living as if they're going to come back, but—" "You don't understand anything," Daniel exploded, standing up abruptly. "You're just a child. You don't know what it's like to truly love someone and lose everything all at once." Emily recoiled, frightened by his reaction. For the first time since they'd met, Daniel seemed truly disturbed. She realized she had touched a wound that was still bleeding after 15 years. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "I didn't mean to." Daniel realized he had overreacted and took several deep breaths to calm down. "No, I'm the one who should apologize. You don't deserve to be yelled at. It's hard to explain. When you lose the most important people in your life, keeping the memories alive is the only thing that stops you from going completely crazy." That night, Emily couldn't sleep thinking about the conversation. She understood the pain of abandonment better than most people, but she also knew that living only in the past wasn't a real life. Daniel was keeping himself alive, but he wasn't living. The following week, county orphanage workers appeared on the trail looking for her. Emily saw them from afar, laboriously climbing the steep path, and ran to warn Daniel. He immediately hid her in the house's basement and faced the workers with impressive calm. "Good morning. We're looking for a girl who ran away from the orphanage a week ago. Dark hair, 12 years old, very stubborn. Someone reported seeing a child in this area," said the social worker, a middle-aged woman with thick glasses. "Haven't seen any child around here. This trail is dangerous. Unlikely a girl could climb it alone," replied Daniel, keeping his expression neutral. "Are you sure? It's very important we find her. The girl has a history of running away and could get hurt." "Absolutely sure. If I saw a lost child on the mountain, the first thing I'd do is help her." The workers remained in the area for another hour, searching the surroundings, but found no trace of Emily. When they finally gave up and went back down the trail, Daniel let the girl out of the hiding place. "Why did you protect me?" she asked, still shaken from having almost been discovered. "Because I recognize in your eyes the same pain I see in the mirror every day. And because a child who can climb this mountain alone, running from a place that mistreats her, deserves a chance to be happy." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out now continuing. Daniel's protection marked a turning point in their relationship. Emily began to truly trust him, while he rediscovered the pleasure of caring for someone. They developed a father-daughter dynamic naturally, without either of them consciously realizing what was happening. Daniel began telling stories about Sarah and Emma during meals. He talked about the way Sarah laughed when she was happy, how she sang while cooking, and how Emma used to ask impossible to answer questions. Emily absorbed every detail, creating a vivid picture in her mind of what it would have been like to grow up in that family. In turn, she began to share fragments of her own story. She talked about the mother who abandoned her, about the difficult years in the orphanage, about the dreams she had of finding a real family. Daniel listened with genuine attention, offering words of comfort when she needed them. One afternoon, while exploring a trail near the house together, Emily tripped in a depression in the ground covered by old foliage. When Daniel helped her up, she noticed the ground at that spot seemed different, softer, as if it had been dug up and refilled long ago. "Daniel, what's here?" she asked, pointing to the strange area. He looked where she pointed, and his expression changed completely. His face turned pale, and he took a step back, as if he had seen a ghost. "Nothing important, just dirt turned over by wild animals. Let's go back home." But Emily had developed a sharp instinct for detecting when adults were lying to her. Daniel's behavior was clearly evasive, and this only heightened her natural curiosity. That night, after Daniel had left, she returned alone to the spot. Using a stick, she began to carefully dig into the soft earth. Just a few inches down, her fingers touched something metallic and cold. Carefully, she excavated around the object until she could pull it out. It was a piece of rusty metal that seemed to have been part of a car, specifically a front grille. There were other fragments scattered around the area, pieces of glass, remnants of faded fabric, and something that made her swallow hard. A small child's leather shoe, deformed by time and moisture. Emily's heart raced as she understood what she had found. This wasn't just a spot where animals had dug. It was where the wreckage of Sarah and Emma's car had been buried after the accident. Daniel came there every day, not just out of nostalgia, but because this was literally the last place his family had been. The discovery unsettled her for several days. She didn't know if she should tell Daniel what she had found, or if she should pretend she knew nothing. Part of her felt she was violating something very intimate and painful by digging at that site. Finally, she decided Daniel deserved to know that she knew the truth. One morning, as they had coffee together, she gathered the courage to broach the subject. "Daniel, I found the car wreckage." He nearly choked on his coffee and looked at her with wide eyes. "What did you say?" "I know where the remains of Sarah and Emma's car are. I found them yesterday near the trail where I tripped." Daniel closed his eyes and took several deep breaths, as if preparing for physical pain. "You shouldn't have disturbed that. That place is sacred." "I know, and I'm sorry for digging, but Daniel, did you bury the wreckage there?" "Yes," he admitted, his voice almost inaudible. "After the firefighters removed the bodies, I asked for permission to take the car remains. I couldn't bear the thought of them going to a junkyard like common trash, so I brought everything here and buried it in this spot where they used to play." Emily felt tears welling in her eyes. Daniel's devotion to his lost family was both touching and devastating. "You come here every day to visit them?" "Yes, it's the only way I found to not go completely insane. I know it must seem sick to you, but—" "It doesn't seem sick. It seems like love," interrupted Emily, surprising him with her emotional maturity. Daniel looked at her with an expression of gratitude mixed with pain. It was the first time in 15 years that someone understood his feelings without judging him as crazy or pathetic. "You are a very special girl, Emily. Sarah would be proud to know you." In the days that followed, they visited together the spot where the wreckage was buried. Daniel told more stories about Sarah and Emma, describing the games they played in that exact place when the girl was little. Emily listened to everything attentively, feeling honored to be included in these precious memories, but she also realized that Daniel was stuck in a cycle of grief that prevented him from living fully. He existed, but he did not live. It worked, but he wasn't happy. And gradually an idea began to form in her mind. "Daniel, have you ever thought about making a proper memorial for them?" she suggested one afternoon while they were arranging fresh flowers in the house. "What do you mean, a memorial?" "Well, instead of keeping the wreckage buried, what if we created a beautiful garden in that spot, with flowers that Sarah liked, benches for you to sit and talk with them, something that honors their memory in a more positive way?" Daniel considered the suggestion for several minutes, clearly torn between his attachment to the physical wreckage and the beauty of Emily's idea. "But if I remove the wreckage from there, it's like I'm abandoning them again." "It's not abandonment, Daniel. It's transformation. You can keep the love and the memories without keeping the sadness buried in the ground." The conversation planted a seed in Daniel's mind. though he still wasn't ready to make a decision. Emily respected his time, knowing that deep changes don't happen overnight. 2 weeks later, county orphanage workers returned to the region for a broader search. This time they brought more people and seemed determined to scour every inch of the mountain. Emily and Daniel watched them from afar, knowing it would be impossible to avoid them for long. "They're going to find me this time," said Emily, with resignation in her voice. "Not necessarily. I can—" "No, Daniel, you've already done so much for me. I don't want you to get into trouble because of me." But when the workers finally reached the stone house, Daniel made a decision that surprised everyone, including Emily. "Good afternoon. We're from the county orphanage. We're looking for a girl named Emily Carter." "I know. She's here," replied Daniel, to the total surprise of the workers and Emily. "What? You said last week you hadn't seen any child." "I lied. I was protecting her, but now I want to do the right thing." Emily came out from behind the door where she had been listening to the conversation, tears in her eyes. She thought Daniel had decided to get rid of her, like all adults eventually did. "But I'm not handing her back to you," Daniel continued, leaving everyone confused. "I want to adopt her officially." The silence that followed was deafening. The social worker looked at Daniel as if he had spoken in a foreign language. "Sir, do you understand that adoption is a very complex process? There are psychological evaluations, home visits, proof of income." "I understand perfectly, and I'm prepared to go through all of it. Emily isn't just any child I happen to find. She came to fill a void I didn't even know still existed." Emily ran to hug Daniel, her tears wetting his shirt. For the first time in her life, someone had chosen to stay with her, had fought for her. The feeling was overwhelming and wonderful at the same time. The legal procedures began the following week. Daniel had to prove he had a stable income as a retiree from the factory where he had worked for 25 years. His house in the city was evaluated as suitable for a child. The psychological history was more complicated due to prolonged grief, but the professionals were impressed by the positive transformation he had shown since Emily entered his life. During the interviews, Emily's full story emerged. Her mother, Jennifer Carter, was a young woman struggling with drug addiction. When Emily was 6, Jennifer had a severe crisis and abandoned her daughter at the orphanage, promising to return when she got better. She never came back. The social worker reported there had been occasional attempts to locate Emily's mother, but she seemed to have completely disappeared. There were no records of a current address or employment. For all legal purposes, Emily was a genuinely abandoned child. During this waiting period for the documents, something unexpected happened. Daniel finally made the decision to turn the crash site into a proper memorial. He and Emily spent days carefully removing each fragment of metal, each piece of glass, each remnant of fabric. Instead of throwing them away, Daniel created a small time capsule with the most significant items: Elena's wedding ring that was found in the wreckage, a small stuffed toy of Emma's, and some photos that were in Elena's wallet. The capsule was buried at the center of what would become the memorial garden. They planted yellow daisies, Elena's favorite flowers, all around the area. Daniel built a wooden bench where he could sit to talk with his memories. A small bronze plaque was placed in the center, with the names of Eleanor and Emma and their birth and passing dates. The process of creating the memorial was cathartic for Daniel in a way he hadn't expected. For the first time in 15 years, he was able to talk about Eleanor and Emma without feeling he was betraying their memories by moving forward. The garden became a place of peace instead of a place of pain. 3 months after the adoption process began, the social worker arrived with unexpected news. Jennifer Carter had been found. She was admitted to a rehabilitation clinic in Washington, D.C., in the process of recovery after a near-fatal overdose that had landed her in the hospital. "She wants to see her daughter," informed the social worker, "and according to the therapists, she is genuinely committed to recovery this time." The news shook both Daniel and Emily. They had grown accustomed to the idea of becoming a family, and the possibility of the biological mother reappearing created an emotionally complex situation. "What does this mean for our adoption?" asked Daniel. "Technically, If the biological mother can prove stability and adequate conditions, she has legal priority. But considering the length of abandonment and the circumstances, the final decision may rest with Emily, depending on what is best for her. Emily was torn between curiosity about the mother she hadn't seen in 6 years and the fear of losing the stability she had found with Daniel. She had created an idealized image of her mother in her mind, but she also knew the reality could be very different. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out. Now, continuing. The first visit to the rehabilitation clinic was scheduled for a week later. Daniel accompanied Emily, promising he would be there to support her no matter what happened. During the 2-hour trip to Washington, D.C., they talked about all the possibilities. "What if she wants me to go back and live with her?" asked Emily, clearly anxious. "Then you will have to decide what is best for you. I will respect your choice even if it hurts my heart. But Daniel, I don't want to leave you alone again. Emily, you have given me the greatest gift possible. You showed me that I am still capable of loving and caring for someone. Even if our situation changes, you will always be my daughter of the heart." When they arrived at the clinic, Jennifer Carter was waiting in a small but cozy visiting room. Emily barely recognized her. The 32-year-old woman looked much older, too thin, with her hair cut short and scars on her arms that told the story of her struggle with drugs. "Emily?" said Jennifer with a hesitant voice. "My God, how you've grown. You're almost a young lady now." The initial meeting was awkward and emotionally charged. Jennifer cried a lot, repeatedly apologizing for the abandonment and trying to explain how drugs had destroyed her ability to be a mother. Emily listened to everything in silence, processing conflicting feelings. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," said Jennifer. "I know I was a terrible mother. But I've been clean for 4 months, and I'm fighting every day to become the person you deserve to have from the beginning." "Why did it take so long?" asked Emily, her voice laden with contained pain. 6 years, Mom. 6 years without a letter, without a phone call, without knowing if you were alive, or... Because I was ashamed. Ashamed of what I had become, ashamed of how I abandoned you, and because I thought you would be happier without me messing up your life." Daniel observed the conversation in silence, respecting the mother-daughter moment, but ready to intervene if Emily needed support. He could see how difficult that encounter was for her. The visits became weekly. Jennifer was truly committed to her recovery, and the therapists confirmed she had made significant progress. She got a job as a cleaning assistant at the clinic itself, and was saving money to rent a small apartment when she was discharged. But Emily realized that something fundamental had changed in her during the years separated from her mother. She had grown, matured, developed independence and inner strength. The frightened girl who was abandoned at the county orphanage no longer existed. In her place was a resilient young woman who knew exactly what she wanted. After 2 months of regular visits, Jennifer was discharged from the clinic and moved to a 1-bedroom apartment downtown. She immediately petitioned to regain custody of Emily, presenting proof of employment, medical certificates stating she was clean, and recommendation letters from the therapists. The case went to judicial review. During the hearing, everyone involved had the opportunity to speak. Jennifer argued that she was the biological mother and had overcome her problems. Daniel defended that he had formed a deep bond with Emily and could offer emotional and financial stability. But the surprise came when Emily asked to speak directly to the judge. With impressive maturity for her 12 years, she expressed her feelings with clarity and honesty. "Your Honor, I love my biological mother and I am proud of her recovery. But in the last few months, I have found something I never had before, a real family. Daniel didn't adopt me out of pity or charity. He chose me because he loves me and I love him as a father. My mother abandoned me when I needed her most, and I understand she was sick. But Daniel found me when I was lost and gave me a home. He taught me what it feels like to be safe, loved and valued. I don't want to punish my mother or reject her completely, but I want to continue living with Daniel and have regular visits with her until she proves she has truly managed to change her life." The judge was clearly impressed by Emily's eloquence and emotional maturity. After deliberating for a week, he issued a decision that partially satisfied everyone involved. Official custody would be granted to Daniel, with extensive visitation rights for Jennifer. Emily would spend alternating weekends with her biological mother, but would continue living with Daniel. The situation would be reassessed in a year when everyone could demonstrate how the new dynamic was working. Jennifer was initially disappointed not to regain full custody, but the therapists helped her understand that this decision was truly best for Emily. She could rebuild the relationship with her daughter gradually, without the pressure of assuming full parental responsibilities before she was completely ready. The months that followed were a period of adaptation for everyone. Emily began studying at a school near Daniel's house and made new friends who learned to accept her unconventional family situation. She continued helping Daniel care for the memorial garden and learned a lot about gardening and plant care. The visits with Jennifer also evolved positively. Initially tense and emotionally charged, they gradually became more natural and comforting. Jennifer stopped trying to compensate for the lost years with gifts and grand promises, focusing instead on simply being present and building a genuine connection with her daughter. One afternoon, while tidying up the memorial garden together, Emily asked a question Daniel didn't expect. "Daniel, do you believe Sarah and Emma would be happy with our family?" Daniel stopped pruning the daisies and looked thoughtfully at the yellow flowers swaying in the mountain breeze. "You know, Emily, I believe they would. Sarah always said that true love is neither jealous nor possessive. If she could see us now, I think she'd be happy to know I found a way to love again without forgetting what we shared." "And Emma? Do you think she would have liked having an older sister?" Daniel smiled, imagining his lost daughter playing with Emily in that same garden. "Emma loved other children. She would have been delighted to have a sister as brave and smart as you." That night, for the first time in 15 years, Daniel slept without nightmares. His dreams were filled with images of Sarah and Emma smiling and waving to him and Emily, as if giving their blessing to the new life they had built. 6 months after the adoption was finalized, an unexpected visitor appeared at their door. It was Dr. Rebecca Williams, a social worker specializing in family reunification cases, who had been following their story with professional interest. 1 year after the official adoption, an unexpected visitor appeared at the stone house door. It was Dr. Rebecca Williams, a social worker specializing in family reunification cases, who had been following their story with professional interest. "Good morning, Daniel." "Hi, Emily. May I speak with both of you for a few minutes?" "Of course, Doctor. Is something wrong with the legal process?" asked Daniel, immediately concerned. "No, it's not about legal issues. Actually, it's an opportunity. I'm here because the two of you have become an inspiring example of how unconventional families can work perfectly." Rebecca explained that she was writing a book about successful adoptions between older adults and older children. The story of Daniel and Emily had caught her attention because of how they had both healed past traumas through mutual care. "I would like to include you in the book, of course, with names changed to protect your privacy. Your story could inspire other adults who have lost children to consider adoption, and could give hope to older children who think they will never find a family." Emily and Daniel exchanged glances and agreed to participate in the project. They understood that their journey, though personal and unique, could truly help other people in similar situations. During the interviews for the book, touching details emerged about how each had transformed the other's life. Daniel rediscovered the purpose and joy of being a father, while his experience of loss made him an even more attentive and caring parent. Emily gained not only a stable home, but also learned about resilience, forgiveness, and how to turn pain into growth. The book was published 2 years later, under the title Families of the Heart, When Love Rebuilds Lives. The story of Daniel and Emily, with fictional names, became one of the most moving chapters, generating hundreds of letters from readers who identified with their experiences. Inspired by the positive impact of their story, Daniel and Emily decided to become more actively involved in volunteer work. They began visiting county orphanages in the region, not to recruit children for adoption, but to share hope and show that families can form in unexpected ways. Emily, now 15, became a mentor for younger children who had experienced abandonment. Her ability to understand the pain of rejection, combined with her story of overcoming, made her especially effective in helping other children not to lose hope. Daniel, in turn, began participating in support groups for men who had lost children. His journey from grief to healing, facilitated by his love for Emily, offered a valuable model of how it is possible to honor the memory of those who are gone while opening up to new relationships. The relationship with Jennifer also continued to evolve positively. She managed to maintain her sobriety and became a stable presence in Emily's life. Although she never regained the role of primary mother, she developed a respectful and caring relationship with her daughter, as well as a genuine friendship with Daniel. Jennifer even began helping Daniel and Emily in their volunteer work, using her own story of addiction and recovery to counsel other parents in similar situations. Her experience became a powerful testimony that recovery is possible and that past mistakes do not have to define the future. On a particularly significant afternoon, the three of them went together to visit the memorial garden. It was the 5-year anniversary of when Daniel and Emily met. The yellow daisies were blooming abundantly, transforming the place into a sea of golden color. "You know, Daniel," said Jennifer, kneeling to touch one of the flowers, "I used to feel jealous of Sarah and Emma, even though they are no longer here. I thought it was unfair that they received so much love while I destroyed my own family. And now?" asked Daniel gently. "Now I understand that love is not a limited resource. You loving Sarah and Emma doesn't diminish your love for Emily. And Emily loving you doesn't diminish the love she can feel for me. I've learned that the human heart is infinitely expandable." Emily hugged both Daniel and Jennifer, creating a moment of deep connection among the three. She had become the link that united two people who, under normal circumstances, would never have met or developed a friendship. In that moment, watching the flowers sway in the gentle mountain breeze, everyone understood they had created something rare and precious, a family built on choice, forgiveness, mutual growth, and unconditional love. The stone house, which began as a refuge of painful memories, had transformed into a home full of new life. The photographs of Sarah and Emma still occupied their special places on the wall, but now they shared space with new memories being created daily. Emily, now a confident and determined young woman, was attending high school and dreamed of studying psychology to help other children and families. Her unique experience had given her deep insights into resilience, love, and the human capacity for healing and transformation. Daniel, at 58, had rediscovered the joy of planning for the future. He and Emily made plans to renovate the house, create a larger vegetable garden, and perhaps even adopt a dog. Life, which had stopped 15 years ago, was once again in full motion. During a school meeting where Emily presented a project on non-traditional families, she spoke eloquently about how true love transcends biological ties. Her presentation moved both teachers and classmates, many of whom came from traditional families and had never considered other forms of family organization. "A family," concluded Emily in her presentation, "is not defined by shared last names or DNA. It's defined by people who choose to love, support, and grow together, regardless of how they met." The sociology professor was so impressed with the presentation that he invited Emily to share her story in other classes. She accepted, seeing it as an opportunity to continue spreading hope and breaking down prejudices about adoptions and blended families. 2 years later, when Emily turned 17, she made a decision that deeply touched both Daniel and Jennifer. She asked to officially make Daniel her father through a legal name change, becoming Emily Carter Mitchell. "I want to carry both last names," she explained. "Carter, because that's who I was and where I come from. Mitchell, because that's who I've become and where I'm going." The informal ceremony they held to celebrate the name change was simple but moving. Jennifer brought a cake she had baked herself, Daniel prepared a special dinner, and they invited Dr. Rebecca and a few close friends who had followed their journey. During the short speech she gave that night, Emily reflected on how her life had changed since that first escape from the county orphanage. "I climbed this mountain looking for a place to hide from the world. Instead, I found a place where I could finally stop hiding and start truly living." Daniel, visibly moved, responded, "And I was hiding in these mountains of life, stuck in the past. You taught me it's possible to honor those we've lost while embracing those we find. Jennifer added, "You both showed me that love has no fixed rules, no right age, and doesn't need to follow a script. Sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones that grow unexpectedly." When the guests had left and the house was quiet, Daniel and Emily went out for their usual evening walk to the memorial garden. It was a tradition they had developed, ending special days by talking to Sarah and Emma, sharing life's joys and challenges. Sitting on the bench Daniel had built, they watched the stars appear in the dark mountain sky. The small town of Aspen glowed softly in the valley below, but up there, surrounded by the flowers they tended with such care, they felt connected to something much larger than their own lives. "Daniel," said Emily, breaking the contemplative silence, "do you think coincidences exist, or do you think some things are simply meant to happen?" Daniel thought for a moment before answering. "You know, Emily, I used to believe life was just a series of cruel accidents. First losing my parents young, then losing Sarah and Emma. It seemed like the universe was conspiring against my happiness. But when you showed up here, small and brave, climbing this mountain alone, I realized that maybe life also conspires for our happiness. Perhaps you were sent to teach me that love can grow again, even in hearts that thought they were permanently broken. And maybe Sarah and Emma guided you here," added Emily. "Maybe they knew you needed someone to love, and that I needed someone to love me." They sat in silence for a few more minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. The gentle wind swayed the yellow daisies, creating an almost musical whisper among the flowers. Suddenly, Emily had an idea that made her smile. "Daniel, would you like to expand our volunteer work? I've been thinking, what if we turned part of our property into a retreat site for families going through adoption or reunification processes?" Daniel looked at her with surprise and growing admiration. "Explain this idea better." "Well, we have a lot of space here, and our history proves that special places can help with emotional healing. We could create a program where families in formation come to spend weekends here, participate in group therapy, do activities together in nature. And the memorial garden could be part of the experience," continued Daniel, excited by the idea. "Many adoptive families deal with losses, parents who have lost biological children, children who have lost parents. Our garden could help people understand that it's possible to honor the past while building the future." The idea grew between them over the following weeks. They researched similar programs, talked with Dr. Alternate Rebecca about the feasibility, and began making preliminary plans. The prospect of transforming their personal experience into something that could benefit hundreds of other families was exciting and frightening at the same time. Jennifer, when she learned of the idea, immediately offered to help. Her experience in addiction recovery would be valuable for families dealing with similar issues. She had also recently graduated as a chemical dependency counselor and was looking for ways to apply her new knowledge. 1 year later, the Hope Mountain Family Center opened its doors to the first group of participating families. The property had been carefully adapted to include simple but comfortable lodgings, therapy rooms with mountain views, and ample outdoor spaces for group activities. The memorial garden became the spiritual heart of the center. Families from across the state traveled to participate in the retreats, where they learned about grief, healing, forming emotional bonds, and building healthy relationships. The story of Daniel, Emily, and Jennifer served as a living example that unconventional families can be extraordinarily successful. During the first year of operation, the center welcomed over 100 families. Each group brought its own stories of loss, hope, challenges, and triumphs. Daniel and Emily discovered that each family taught them something new about the complexity and beauty of human relationships. One of the most touching experiences was with a family formed by 2 men who had adopted teenage siblings after their parents died in an accident. The children were having difficulty accepting their new parents, feeling that it betrayed the memory of their biological parents. Talking in the memorial garden, the teenagers finally understood that loving their new father figures did not diminish the love they felt for their lost parents. They planted 2 new daisy seedlings in the garden, symbolizing that love can grow infinitely without replacing what already exists. Another memorable family consisted of a 45-year-old woman who had adopted an 8-year-old girl after suffering multiple miscarriages. The girl, in turn, had been through several temporary placements and had trouble trusting that this placement would be permanent. During the retreat, while Emily told her own story of abandonment and eventual stability, the child began to understand that true love does not disappear at the first difficulty. The woman learned that patience and consistency are more powerful than grand romantic gestures in building trust. The success of the center attracted the attention of universities and social service organizations. Psychology and social work students began interning at the site, learning innovative family therapy techniques in a natural environment. Emily, now 19, and studying psychology at the State University, divided her time between her studies and her work at the center. Her senior thesis focused on the therapeutic benefits of nature in family formation processes, using data collected from the retreats. Daniel, who had become a self-taught expert in family dynamics, was invited to speak at conferences on adoption and grief. His most popular presentation was called "From Grief to Love: How Loss Can Prepare Hearts for New Bonds." Jennifer developed a specific program for parents recovering from addiction who were seeking reunification with their children. Her approach combined traditional therapy with hands-on activities in nature, helping participants rebuild trust in themselves and their parenting abilities. 5 years after the center opened, they received official recognition from the state as a center of excellence in family services. The award ceremony took place at the center itself in the Memorial Garden, with the attendance of officials, beneficiary families, and professionals in the field. During her acceptance speech, Emily reflected on the journey that had brought them to that moment. "When I was a frightened girl running away from the county orphanage, I never imagined my pain could turn into purpose. I never imagined my story of abandonment could become a story of hope for other families. Daniel never imagined his devastating loss could prepare him to love even more deeply. And my mother Jennifer never imagined her lowest fall could become the foundation for helping others climb up." The three of us learned that traumas do not define who we are, but they can inform who we choose to become. And when we transform our pain into service to others, we discover that healing is contagious. Daniel, now 63 but looking much younger and more vibrant than when Emily first met him, added, "This center exists because a brave girl climbed a mountain searching for freedom and found a family. It exists because a lost family left a legacy of love that keeps growing through new lives touched. Sarah and Emma are no longer here physically, but their love remains present in every family that finds hope in this place. They have become symbolic grandmothers to hundreds of children who have found homes through the retreats." The ceremony ended with the planting of a new tree in the Memorial Garden, a native Brazilian grape tree that would grow slowly but vigorously, producing sweet fruit for future generations. Each family present was invited to throw a handful of soil around the roots, symbolizing that they were part of the continuity of that story. That night, after all the guests had left, Daniel, Emily, and Jennifer sat on the family bench for their usual evening conversation. It was a tradition on these special moments for them to reflect on how much their lives had changed and to express gratitude for the unexpected paths fate had created. "You know something," said Jennifer, watching the city lights twinkle in the valley. "During my worst moments in addiction, I used to look at mountains like this one and think they were symbols of impossible obstacles to overcome." "And now?" asked Emily. "Now I know mountains are not obstacles to be avoided. They are places where life's most important meetings happen. It was climbing this mountain that Emily found a family. It was descending this mountain that I found a second chance to be a mother." Daniel nodded, remembering how his own daily visits to the mountain had begun as pilgrimages of pain and transformed into journeys of renewal. Mountains teach us about resilience, about the beauty that can grow in difficult terrain, about how perspective changes when we gain enough altitude to see the whole picture. Emily, now a confident young adult filled with purpose, looked at the two people who had become her emotional anchors. "You know what amazes me most about our story? How every wound we suffered ended up becoming exactly the necessary experience to help others heal similar wounds. Daniel lost children and therefore understands perfectly parents who go through the same pain. I was abandoned, and so I can reach children who feel rejected. Jennifer fought addiction and therefore can guide others in recovery. It's as if our worst experiences were a preparation for our greater purpose. The three remained in silent contemplation for several minutes, each processing the depth of that observation. Around them, the yellow daisies swayed gently in the evening breeze, as stars appeared one by one in the ever-darkening sky. End of story. So what did you think of the story of Emily, Daniel and Jennifer? Tell us in the comments which moment moved you the most, and if you believe families can really form in such unexpected ways as this. Leave your like if the story touched you, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that show how love can transform lives. Your participation is very important to us.